When a woman laid on the autopsy table during a stormy night suddenly begins to breathe, Lucas, a 25-year veteran forensic pathologist, finds his life, both that night and his entire existence, unexpectedly taking a different turn with a second chance. To avoid missing this story, filled with such incredible emotions, watch it uninterrupted until the very end, and write about the moment that affected you the most in the comments. The rain falls heavily, pounding on the hospital roof. The hallway is empty. Only the echo of Lucas's footsteps can be heard. The floor glistens, wet from the boots of the nurses who passed by a short while ago. The clock on the wall ticks, breaking the silence. The air is cold and smells of disinfectant. He pushes the metal door of the autopsy room with his shoulder. The hinge creaks softly. The white light comes on brightly, making everything pale. The steel table in the center looks like ice. The instruments are organized. Scalpel, tweezers, scissors, needles, thread, everything in its place as always. That's what routine does. It puts everything in line, even pain. Lucas leaves his gown hanging for a second in his hand, breathes, and puts it on slowly. The cold fabric touches his neck. He cracks his knuckles, takes the board, checks the seal, checks the time without haste, without anger, without anything. Just an old tiredness, the kind that lives deep in your chest and never sleeps. "One more night," he says softly, almost without a voice. He doesn't wait for an answer. No one answers here. The storm grows stronger outside. Thunder breaks the silence. The whole hospital seems to hold its breath when the noise comes. Then everything returns. The raindrops on the windows, the refrigerator in the room vibrating, an old fan in the corner spinning crookedly. Lucas walks to the sink, washes his hands like someone praying without believing, scrubs, rinses, dries. The water runs thin and cold, and he feels a chill run up his arms. He looks at his face in the steel of the cabinet, or deep wrinkles, a poorly shaved gray beard, eyes that have seen too much. He closes the cabinet door, and the reflection disappears. "Let's go," he murmurs, resting his palm on the metal of the table. The cold penetrates his glove, penetrates his skin, seems to touch the bone. He stays there a second longer, as if he needs to remember who he is. A forensic scientist for 25 years, steady hands, a logical mind, no faith, no promises, no miracles, only facts, measurements, reports. On the other side of the room, an old forgotten radio tries to pick up a station, but only static comes out. He turns the knob, gives up, prefers silence. In the silence, he hears things no one wants to hear. The long hiss of the air conditioner, the tapping of the blinds, his own heart. He opens the large drawer of the steel cabinet and takes out the white sheet, folded carefully. It has a clean, slightly sweet smell. He spreads it out on the table with a care that almost no one notices. A small gesture, almost affectionate. It's strange, but that's how he does it. Even though he feels empty inside, on the outside he respects the ritual. He stands for a moment in front of the empty table. Just him, the rain, the cold light, and the memory that arrives without asking permission. 3 years, and it still hurts, as if it were yesterday. He closes his eyes and sees her small, warm hand holding his. He sees the dark room, the open window, the wind moving the curtain. He sees what no one else saw. The rest try not to see. "Not today. Sorry," Clara whispers. Almost without a voice, today. He doesn't open his eyes. He takes a deep breath, like someone coming up from a dive that lasted too long. He looks at the ceiling, the lights flickering. The hospital doesn't judge, the hospital just asks him to continue, and he continues, because that's what he knows how to do. The door to the room moves gently with a draft and closes on its own. Lucas checks the instruments again out of habit. Sharp tip, new blade. Separate labels, pen, working. He writes the date, the time, the room. His handwriting is that of a tired but steady teacher. It is handwriting. He learned not to shake, normal procedure. He says without looking at anyone. It's just a way to keep his mind in order. The fluorescent light on the ceiling flickers twice. That flickering always bothers him. It makes him want to grab a ladder and change it right then and there, but he leaves it. Life has already taught him that there are light bulbs you can't change. You just learn to live with the flickering. He leans his back against the cold wall and listens to the rain. A little longer, he thinks about how everything here is simple and hard. A cold room, a steel table, a pen, a name on a board, and him, a man who forgot how to cry. That's how it's been, day after day, night after night. I don't feel anything loose, as if he were tasting a truth. It's better this way, but it's not entirely true. Deep down, there's a thread that still pulls a little warmth that he pretends doesn't exist. It's what makes him arrange the sheet carefully. It's what makes him wash his hands as if he were going to touch something sacred. It's what makes him remain silent. Respect. Even though faith is gone, respect remains. He goes to the high window and tries to see the city. He can only see his own shadow and the water flowing down, creating crooked paths on the glass. Below, distant sirens pierce the dawn. Washington City does not sleep, nor does Santa Esperanza. Lucas returns to the center of the room, checks the chart again, puts down the pen, adjusts his gown, and breathes. His breath comes out in a little white cloud in the cold air. His chest rises and falls slowly, as if counting to 10 without haste. "Let's get to work," he says this time in a tone that is almost a hug for himself, a phrase that takes his hand to continue without asking if it hurts. Another employee enters and looks at him with a surprised expression. "I saw the light on. I thought there was someone here," she says, looking at Lucas. "I'm waiting for the body. They told me to come because it would be here by now," he says without much enthusiasm. She looks at him confused, lets out an uncomfortable giggle and says, "Sorry, doctor, but they put the girl's body in the next room. They said it was her room. How strange, but oh well," he says, grabbing his things and leaving the room. The clipboard is on the steel table. The wet paper with folded edges has a name that is not a name, unknown. The handwriting is hurried, as if someone had written it with the desire to finish quickly. Lucas reviews the file with his eyes as slowly as possible. "Cardiac arrest," he repeats in a low voice with a short sigh, like someone who doesn't believe or stop believing, just reads, just complies. The lamp above casts broken shadows on the white sheet covering the body. The rain continues outside, stubbornly hitting the window with a sound that seems to follow his breathing. Lucas rests his hands on the table, feels the cold rising up his arms, and observes the shape under the small, light fabric. He pulls the sheet carefully, as if afraid of waking up a silence. The fabric unfurls, and her face appears for a moment. He stops. The face is young, perhaps 30 years old, perhaps younger. Her wet hair is stuck to her skin. There are still leaves and dirt tangled in it, as if she had fallen on the wet ground. Her eyelashes are heavy, but her lips still have color, a soft, almost vivid tone. Lucas leans in a little closer, frowns, his gaze fixed on that mouth. He has seen hundreds of bodies, perhaps thousands, but there is something there that does not fit with death. It is as if time had forgotten to take her whole life with it. He touches her carefully with his fingertips, expecting to feel the usual coldness, but it is not the same. Her skin is warm, very slightly, but it is warm. He recoils in surprise, takes off his glove, and touches her again directly with the tip of his index finger. He remains still for a second, trying to understand if it is just his imagination. "How strange," he murmurs. "She's still warm. She's not purple like usual." He looks at the file again. No family, no contacts, nothing. Just an anonymous body that arrived in the rain. They say they found her lying near the central square. No documents, no bag, nothing. Unknown. That word has always bothered him. People who disappear from the world as if they never existed. No one asks, no one cries, no one comes looking. He turns around the table and runs his hand through his hair. He looks at her again. Her fingers are bent as if they were still holding something invisible. Dirty nails, thin wrist, no breath. Everything indicates that she is dead, but that little color on her lips makes him doubt. Lucas grabs the stethoscope more out of habit than faith. He puts it on her chest. Silence. Only the sound of the rain and a small noise from the device. Nothing. He removes it slowly. He exhales but continues to look. "Who are you?" he asks in a voice quietly, almost like a whisper. "What happened to you?" Her face seems calm, like someone who sleeps after crying a lot. There is something tender and sad in that expression. A small cut on her forehead, a scratch on her neck, her hair full of mud. Even so, there is beauty, a tired but complete beauty. He takes a cloth, wets it with a little saline solution, and begins to clean her face. A simple, almost automatic gesture, but with tenderness. He wipes the cloth, cleaning the dirt from her cheeks, removing the leaves from her hair. Her skin has a warm, vivid tone. He smells a soft perfume mixed with rain, a scent of life that still wants to remain unknown. He repeats, as if he cannot accept it, "No one is so unknown." He puts the cloth away and looks at her again, his eyes moving between her lips and his hands. The cold light illuminates the glint of water trapped in her hair. Her body almost seems to breathe, as if the air had forgotten to leave. He shakes his head, wanting to get rid of that thought. He takes the scalpel and places the instrument on the tray, but he doesn't start. He just looks at something. Something stops him, a discomfort deep down, a chill in the back of his neck, that feeling he learned to ignore over the years. But today is different. The rain falls harder. Thunder breaks the silence, making the glass vibrate. He sighs and talks to himself, as if unburdening himself. You know, the worst part of all this isn't seeing those who die. It's seeing those whom no one comes to claim. The phrase hangs in the air, echoing inside him. He remembers his wife's eyes on her last day in the hospital, the sound of the monitor as it stopped. All of that comes back like a punch in the stomach, and he closes his eyes for a moment to calm himself. When he opens them, her face is still there, motionless, but it looks different. There is something tender about that expression, as if she were saying, "Look at me." Lucas feels strange, vulnerable. It's been a long time since he's felt anything for anyone. "I'm sorry," he whispers, rearranging the sheets over his body. "I shouldn't have looked so much." He returns to the file and runs his finger over the identification field. There is only one empty line there. That blank space seems bigger than the paper. Lucas leans against the cold wall, crosses his arms, watches his breathing, weighs the clock. It's 2:17 a.m. The room is filled with a silence that seems to be waiting for something. He feels it. The wind enters through a crack in the window, slightly moving the sheet. It's a small movement, but enough to make his heart beat faster for a second. He approaches, holding the fabric to see if it was the wind. Nothing moves, only the sound of the rain and the ticking of the clock. Even so, the discomfort remains. That face, those hands, the heat that won't go away. Something there doesn't seem dead. Lucas takes a step back without taking his eyes off her. He speaks softly, as if talking to himself. "You don't seem dead." The sound of his own voice scares him a little. He remains silent, watching. The whole hospital is asleep, but inside that cold room, something begins to awaken. Not in the body on the table, but inside him, a part of his sensitivity that he thought was dead, along with everything he lost. And so, between the rain and the silence, the coroner stands there in front of a nameless woman, feeling, without knowing why, that something that night is not as it has always been. Lucas holds the scalpel between his fingers, as he has done thousands of times before. He breathes calmly, his eyes alert, and his movements precise. He approaches the body and adjusts the light on the table. The white beam falls directly on the woman's face. Her skin now looks lighter, and for a second he feels his heart beating differently, fast, for no reason. He breathes. He tries to push that thought away. "Let's do this," he murmurs to himself. The scalpel touches the skin, a soft touch, almost without force. It is the most common, and at the same time the most solemn moment of his work. But that night, the commonality does not last. A sound, almost nothing, a slight sigh, so soft that Lucas thinks he has imagined it. He stops. The scalpel remains suspended in the air. The silence returns, heavy and complete. The lamp flickers. Lucas holds his breath and hears a faint sundar again, a sigh. The scalpel falls from his hand and hits the floor with a metallic sound. Lucas takes a step back. The body on the table moves, almost imperceptibly, but it moves. The chest rises slightly, and before he can think, a second, louder sigh comes, whispering without belief. The air seems to disappear from the room. He stares without blinking, and then slowly, as if waking from a deep sleep. The woman's eyelids tremble. Her eyes open, green, so green that a chill runs through his whole body. There is life there. There is confusion, fear, pain, but life. Lucas is speechless. The sound of the rain outside becomes a distant noise. He feels the blood pounding in his temples, his heart beating very hard, the air stuck in his throat. "Ma'am!" His voice comes out hoarse, almost without strength. Her eyes move around, lost, trying to understand where she is. She tries to open her mouth, but can't. Her throat makes a rough, wet, choppy sound. She tries to breathe and chokes. "Calm down. Calm down." Lucas approaches, not knowing whether to touch her or walk away. "Don't talk. Breathe. Try to breathe." The woman gasps, coughing softly. Her tongue seems heavy. Her chest moves with visible effort. Her whole body seems to be fighting to come back. Lucas looks around, not knowing what to do first. Sweat runs down his temples. The scalpel is still on the floor, forgotten. He moves closer. "Can you hear me?" he asks again, his heart pounding. She tries to answer, but only a moan comes out, almost a whisper. Her lips move, but the words are lost. Her eyes search his desperately. Lucas feels his legs tremble. The air becomes heavy. His body freezes for an instant. Time stands still. He understands what he sees, but his brain refuses to accept it. "Holy God," he murmurs, taking 2 steps back. "Holy God." The chair behind him falls, the noise echoing through the room. His heart races. He leans against the wall, pale. The body on the table moves again, a slight spasm, almost a tremor. Her chest rises. Air enters, and a soft sound, almost a cry, comes out of her mouth. "Help," she seems to say between sobs. Lucas feels the floor disappearing beneath his feet, his hands trembling. He runs back to her, takes her pulse, and feels a weak but real heartbeat. "She's alive," he says, unable to hide his surprise. "My God, she's alive." The light shines on the sweat on his forehead. He doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. His heart is beating like it hasn't in years. The world is spinning. The sound of the rain returns, pounding loudly on the glass. The woman tries to turn her face and coughs. Her voice comes out scratchy. "Where am I?" Lucas chokes on his own words. He who was always a man in control is now trembling all over. "You're in the hospital," he replies quickly, his voice shaking. "Calm down. Don't move. I'm going to call for help." But he doesn't move. He stays there, looking into those green eyes that look at him as if asking for something he doesn't understand. She tries to take a deep breath, but the air fails her. Her body weakens. He leans over her, his face a few inches away. "Stay with me. Do you hear me? Stay with me." Her hand moves slightly, almost touching his. It's a small gesture, but enough to break him. He feels a lump in his throat. His chest tightens, and he whispers without realizing it. "I thought you were dead." The woman closes her eyes, her body still trembling with weakness. The sound of her breathing fills the room like a prayer. Lucas takes a step back, not knowing whether to cry, scream, or kneel. His head is spinning. He leans against the wall, trying to breathe, but he can't. What just happened is impossible. In seconds, footsteps begin to echo through the hospital corridors. The sound of shoes on the wet floor mixes with the rain that continues to fall outside, insistent and unrelenting. The door to the autopsy room opens with a bang, hitting the wall. 2 nurses run in, frightened. "What happened, doctor?" one of them asks, not understanding what she sees. "She breathed," Lucas shouts, pointing to the table. "She's alive, for God's sake." The nurse looks at the body and turns pale, but that woman had already been declared dead, she says, running toward the stretcher. "I saw the report myself." Lucas doesn't respond, just grabs his head, his whole body shaking, feeling like his heart is going to explode in his chest. Another nurse arrives, pushing a cart with equipment. The floor's emergency alarm sounds. In seconds, the room fills with people, doctors, assistants, all talking at once. "Pressure!" one shouts. "Connect the oxygen!" another orders. "Move her here, quickly!" The sound of machines fills the air. Hoses, cables, tubes. The smell of alcohol and adrenaline invades everything. Lucas takes a step back, not knowing where to look. The scene is controlled chaos, but fear and surprise are on every face. One of the doctors, Dr. Herrera, approaches him. "Lucas, what happened here?" "I was about to start the procedure," he tries to explain with a broken voice. She sighed. "I heard her, and then she opened her eyes." Herrera looks at him in disbelief. "That's impossible. She was pronounced dead over an hour ago." "Yes," he replies with tears in his eyes, "and yet she came back." The other doctor looks at the woman on the table. Her body is now covered in wires and tubes. One of the nurses says, "Weak pulse, but it's there." Time seems to stand still. Everyone looks at each other. A strange silence fills the room. Even the rain seems to calm down for a second. The impossible is happening before their eyes. "Increase the oxygen," says Herrera. "Quick, let's stabilize her." The woman is breathing with difficulty. Her chest rises and falls irregularly. The heart monitor begins to show small spikes. Beep, beep, beep. Lucas feels his body shudder. The nurse looks at him and says quietly, "Doctor, she's coming back." He closes his eyes for a moment, as if to make sure he's not dreaming. His hands are still shaking. The air seems too heavy to breathe. "Continue with light chest compressions," says Herrera. "Let's see if we can stabilize her rhythm." The minutes that follow are a mixture of haste and tension. People coming and going, voices crossing, sounds of irregular IV devices, and the rush of oxygen. Lucas watches everything without blinking, his face pale, his gloves covered in sweat. Little by little, his chest moves more strongly. Air enters, exits, enters again. The heart monitor begins to show a steady rhythm. "She's stabilizing," says a relieved doctor. Her heart is beating. Everyone in the room breathes a sigh of relief. A nurse leans against the wall, breathing deeply, as if she had run a marathon. Lucas approaches slowly. The sound of the monitor is the only thing that matters now. Each beep is like a blow to his chest. "My God," he murmurs, his voice barely audible. Her heart is beating. The nurse confirms 62 beats per minute, rising slowly. He's going to make it. Lucas's eyes fill with tears. He tries to hide them, but can't. He turns his face away and quickly wipes them with the back of his hand. How is this possible?" asks someone still in shock. One of the doctors responds incredulously. "It must have been deep hypothermia. The body gets so cold that the vital signs disappear. It may look like death, but it's as if the body falls asleep." Another adds that her temperature must have been very low. She was declared dead, but she wasn't. Those words send a chill down Lucas's spine. He looks at the woman, still unconscious, and understands the cruel irony of it all. The body he was about to open is now fighting to stay alive. Alive. A respectful silence fills the room. No one speaks. No one moves. Everyone looks at her, breathing deeply, trying to understand what they have just seen. After a while, the nurse adjusts the sheets, wipes the sweat from the patient's forehead, and looks at Lucas with a mixture of fear and hope. "Doctor, if you hadn't noticed, she would have died." Lucas feels his chest tighten. Those words hit him hard. He takes a deep breath and leans on the table, trying to stay steady. "I was about to kill a living woman," he whispers. "About to." Herrera puts his hand on his shoulder. "You saved her, Lucas. That's what matters now." But Lucas doesn't respond. He just looks at the body that a few minutes ago was simply the nameless woman. The sound of her heartbeat remains steady, each beat a reminder that death sometimes makes mistakes. Outside, the rain begins to calm down little by little. It becomes a murmur inside the room. Her breathing begins to stabilize. The chaos turns back into silence, but this time, it is a silence full of life. Lucas takes off his gloves, runs his hands over his face, and lets out the heavy air that had been trapped inside him for hours. Later, sunlight timidly enters through the window of the room. The sound of birds outside mixes with the distant noise of medicine carts in the hallway. The hospital, which at night seemed like a place of ghosts, is now alive, but the atmosphere in the room remains filled with silence. The woman lying down moves her fingers slowly. The white sheet rises and falls to the slow rhythm of her breathing. The monitor shows a steady, gentle heartbeat. Her eyes open heavily, as if they were carrying the weight of the whole world. For a moment, she doesn't understand anything. The white ceiling, the window, the sound of the machines. Everything seems strange and out of place. She tries to move, but her body is weak. Her voice comes out hoarse, almost a whisper. "Where am I?" Strange, out of place. She tries to move, but her body is weak. Her voice comes out hoarse, almost a whisper. Where am I?" Lucas, who is sitting in a corner of the room, gets up slowly. He spent the night there without sleeping, his robe wrinkled, his face tired, his eyes red. But when he hears her voice, something inside him awakens. He approaches calmly, trying not to scare her. "You're in the hospital," he says. "Santa Esperanza," she replies in a low, calm voice, as if talking to someone who has just woken up from a nightmare. "They found you on the street. It was very cold." She turns her face slowly to look at him, frowning in confusion. "Hospital," she repeats. "I don't remember." Lucas nods. "It's okay. Don't strain yourself. The important thing is that you're alive." She closes her eyes for a moment, a tremor passing over her lips. Her fragile hands clench the sheet. "Alive," she murmurs, as if tasting the word. "I shouldn't be alive." Lucas. He feels a lump in his throat and remains silent, not knowing what to say. He notices her lost, heavy gaze, filled with something he knows well, guilt. She takes a deep breath, trying to remember. Tears begin to well up slowly, moistening the corners of her eyes. She tries to speak, her voice breaking. "I remember the cold, the rain, and wanting it all to end." Lucas takes a step forward, but stops. The sound of her confession is so sincere, so raw, that it makes his stomach churn. "Calm down," he says softly. "You don't have to talk about that now." But she continues as if the words need to come out. "I was tired," she says, sobbing. "Tired of me, of everything. I just wanted to stop feeling." The crying comes completely, a stifled, contained cry that seems to come from a deep, old place. She covers her face with her hands, trembling. Her whole body seems to ask for forgiveness for existing. Lucas approaches, not knowing if he should touch her. After a moment, he slowly reaches out his hand and touches her shoulder. "Hey, look at me." His voice is firm, but full of care. "You went through something very difficult, I know, but now you have a chance. You're alive. Breathe." She looks at him, still crying, her green eyes now filled with tears, shining in the morning light. "Why?" she asks, almost voiceless. "Why am I still here?" The question cuts through the air. Lucas swallows. He could give her 1,000 medical explanations, but none of them would make sense at that moment, so he just says what he feels. "Maybe because there's still something waiting for you." She remains silent. Tears fall, slowly. Her chest rises and falls unevenly. He takes a glass of water and offers it to her. She tries to hold it, but her hands are shaking too much. He helps her, and for a second, their touch is light, human, real. Slowly he says, "That's right." She takes a sip, closes her eyes, and takes a deep breath. "I thought no one would care," she whispers. "No one would miss me." Lucas bends down a little, looking directly at her. There is always someone who feels, even if we don't know it. The silence returns, dense and full of meaning. The woman wipes her face with the back of her hand. She is still sobbing softly, but her breathing begins to calm down. "You were here yesterday?" she asks doubtfully. He looks away thoughtfully. "Yes, and really," he can't finish the sentence. He just nods with moist eyes. "Yes, but now that doesn't matter. You came back." She bites her lip, trying not to cry again. "I don't know if I wanted to come back." Lucas sighs deeply, staring at her. "Sometimes we don't want to, but life wants it for us." She looks at him silently. The tears fall again, but now they are softer, as if washing away some of the pain she had inside. He adjusts the sheets over her shoulders in a simple gesture, full of tenderness. "Rest," he says, softly. "We'll talk more later." She nods wearily. Her eyes close slowly, her face serene but wet with tears. Lucas stays there looking at her for a few seconds. Outside, the sun shines on the wet leaves. Inside the room, the sound of the monitor continues to mark the time. Beep, beep, beep. Lucas leans against the wall, runs his hands over his face, and exhales slowly. For the first time in a long time, he feels something different, something he can't explain, a mixture of surprise and gratitude. The woman takes a deep breath on the bed, as if she were returning from the bottom of a well. The whole hospital, even though it doesn't know it, seems to breathe with her, as if that morning life had decided to give a new chance not only to her, but also to him. The room is quiet. The afternoon sun enters through the window, drawing a rectangle of light on the floor. The woman is sitting on the bed, her hair loose, her eyes downcast. Her fingers move restlessly over the sheet, as if looking for something to hold on to. Lucas enters slowly with a folder in his hands. He tries to smile, but his face looks tired, marked by a sleepless night. "How are you?" he asks in a low voice. She shrugs. "Alive? I guess that's something." He moves a little closer, pulls up a chair and sits down next to her. The sound of the heart monitor is the only thing that fills the silence between them. "Did you sleep well?" he insists. She shakes her head, slowly. "I dreamed too much. I woke up tired." Lucas just nods. He waits. He knows that sometimes silence says more than any question. After a while, she lets out a long sigh. "I can tell you something." He looks up. "Sure." She stares into space, moving her hands. Her voice comes out low, drawn out, barely a whisper. "I didn't fall in the street like they said. I jumped." Lucas feels his whole body tense up for a moment. He can't even breathe. "How?" she asks, almost in a whisper. She takes a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears. "I was tired, that's all. Tired of trying to pretend that everything was fine. The pain was too much. I just wanted it to stop." Her voice breaks. Tears begin to fall silently. She clutches the sheet tightly, as if she wants to squeeze out what's left inside her. "I saw the car coming." She continues to sob, and for a moment I thought she was finally going to find peace. "Lucas." He says nothing. The sound of his words fills the air and cuts him inside. He feels a lump in his throat, a pain that makes it almost hurt to breathe. His hands tremble, hidden in his lap. She wipes her tears with the back of her hand. "But I failed even at that," she says bitterly. "I wasn't even good enough to die." He gets up slowly and walks to the window, looking down at the street. Memories come back like a blow. The sound of the monitor, the crying in the hallway, the muffled cry of a woman he loved and couldn't save. 3 years, and it still feels like yesterday. She watches him without understanding his silence. "You think I'm a coward, don't you?" he asks quietly. Lucas turns his face toward her, his gaze deep and heavy. "I don't think you were hurt, and when the pain is too great, you just want to stop feeling." She lowers her gaze, crying again. "I just wanted someone to see me," she confesses. Just that. Those words hit him. He feels his chest tighten, because that's what his wife said in her last days. "You don't see me anymore, Lucas." The memory hits him so hard that he has to close his eyes to keep from crying. Silence fills the room. Neither of them speaks for a while. The sound of the clock seems louder inside. Lucas is broken. He tries to hide it, but his hands are shaking. He takes a deep breath and tries to pull himself together. When he speaks, his voice is firm, but full of emotion. "I know what it's like to lose someone and think you can't go on." "I know." She looks up, surprised. "You too?" He hesitates for a second, swallows. "My wife Clara." His voice breaks. He needs to stop before continuing. "She also gave up after losing our son." The whole room seems to stop breathing. The woman puts her hand to her mouth, moved. "I'm so sorry," she says through tears. "I didn't know." "Nobody knows," he replies, looking at the floor. "And maybe I never said it out loud, because deep down I also wanted to disappear, but I never had the courage." She looks at him in silence. His pain is real, and suddenly she understands that she is not the only one who is broken. "I couldn't save her," Lucas continues with teary eyes. "And when you got here, I thought it was just another death. But when I saw you breathe, I felt something I hadn't felt in years." She looks at him, confused and moved. "What?" He takes a deep breath of hope. Her tears return. But now they are not tears of despair. They are tears of something new, small and fragile. He approaches her and takes her hand gently. "Listen to what I'm going to tell you," he says, looking her in the eyes. "You didn't fail. Life gave you a second chance, and I'm not going to let you waste it." She squeezes his hand, crying. Her gaze changes. There is still pain, But now there is also a different sparkle, the beginning of faith, a small desire to try again. "I'm afraid," she admits between sobs. "Me too," he replies sincerely, but also fearfully. They remain there, holding by the hand, unhurried, breathing the same heavy air, full of feeling. Two wounded people who by chance, or perhaps not by chance, found each other at the darkest point in their lives. Outside, the sun begins to set. Golden light enters through the window and touches their faces. It is a simple scene, but there is something sacred about it, as if for a moment the whole world stopped to watch two hearts that, after a long time, are beating to the same rhythm. The next day dawns quietly. The room where she is feels lighter. The evening light enters through the window, gilding the white sheet and the loose hair resting on the pillow. Lucas is sitting near the bed, reviewing papers, but never taking his eyes off her. She wakes up slowly, moving her head, blinking at the light. For a few seconds, she seems lost, as if trying to remember where she is. Then she turns her face and sees him there, silent and attentive, with a look that mixes concern and calm. "You're still here?" she asks in a weak voice, but stronger than in previous days. He smiles slightly. "Yes," and then says, almost jokingly, "You gave me quite a scare. I thought you weren't coming back." She also tries to smile, but fatigue weighs heavily on her face. "I didn't think so either," she replies. Looking at the ceiling, Lucas looks away for a moment, understanding that forcing words is like pressing on a wound. He waits a moment, and then asks carefully, "May I know your name? We talked a lot yesterday, but I didn't ask." She takes a while to answer. She looks at her hands, the fine marks on her fingers, the band-aid on her wrist. The silence feels like a minefield, but finally she speaks. "Talia." He repeats it slowly, savoring the sound. Talia. The word hangs in the air, as if it had its own weight. It is a simple, even common, but there is something about it that touches him deeply, as if it were made for this moment, for this story. He feels a chill, and a thought comes to him without asking permission. "Talia, maybe this is what God wanted to give me back today." She looks at him, not understanding why his gaze has changed. "He's a silly man," she says, trying to hide her embarrassment. "I always thought it sounded sad." "Sad?" he asks with a small smile. "I think it sounds beautiful. True." She frowns. She frowns. "True. Yes." He crosses his hands over his legs. Talia means the one who blooms, the joyful one. It has to do with the most alive thing we have, even when everything seems dead. Joy is what makes us want to go on. She remains silent, as if those words had reached a forgotten place. Her breathing changes, becoming slower. After a while, she says softly, "It's been a long time since I felt alive." Lucas feels a lump in his throat. He could say 1,000 things, but he decides to remain silent. Sometimes, all that heals is a listening gaze. He watches her in silence, a silence full of respect, the same respect he learned in the cold early mornings of the autopsy room. She continues in a whisper, "When I woke up here, I thought it was a punishment. I thought I wasn't even good enough to die, but now I don't know. I'm trying to understand what's left of me." He leans forward slightly, looking her eyes. "A lot is left," he says firmly. "Everything is still there inside, only tired." She looks at him with a different light, a mixture of pain and curiosity. "You talk as if you know me." "Maybe I do," he replies without looking away. "I've seen many people without life, and also many who are alive on the outside, and dead on the inside. You are not one of them." She laughs a little, a small, almost sad laugh. "You speak beautifully. I say what I see," he replies simply. "And what I see is a woman who has not yet understood the great strength she possesses." She looks away in shame. Outside, the sun sets slowly, painting the sky orange. The light enters the room and touches her face, showing that there is still life there, even though it is beneath the fatigue, the pain, and the marks. Lucas observes that face with a tenderness he has not felt in years. It is as if every feature of hers speaks to him of what he himself lost: his faith, his hope, his love for the little things. Her name echoes in his mind again. Talia. He feels a lump in his throat. She notices he is distracted, lost in thought. He smiles, trying to hide what he is feeling. "Nothing," he says. And then, in a lighter tone, "Or perhaps everything." She shakes her head, not understanding. "You're strange, doctor." He laughs softly. "I think I've become like this from talking so much with silence." She smiles too, but then her gaze changes. She becomes pensive, with the air of someone who has seen too much for someone so young. Her eyes are tired, but there is a sweetness that remains alive, a kind of sad kindness that one only carries after breaking and mending one's heart several times. "Sometimes I wish I were someone else," she confesses in a low voice. "Someone who doesn't feel so much, who doesn't think so much." Lucas moves a little closer. "And I sometimes wish I could feel more. I think that's how we are. Each of us wanting to be someone else." She sighs, looking out the window. "Do you think people can change?" He thinks for a moment and then replies, "I don't think we change. We just remember. We remember what we were, what we lost, and we try to go back to that." She looks at him, moved. "And you've already managed to go back." Lucas lowers his gaze, his chest tight. "Not yet, but I think today I took the first step." The silence that follows is soft, almost beautiful. The hour passes quickly, the sun is gone, and the light in the room grows softer. Talia lays her head on the pillow, tired but calm. Lucas gets up, adjusts the blanket, and walks toward the door. Before he leaves, she calls out softly, "Doctor, thank you." He stops at the door, turns his face, and smiles. "Why? For looking at me as if I were someone?" Lucas holds his breath for a second. Her voice pierces him. "You are someone, Talia. You always have been." She closes her eyes and a tear falls. Runs silently, almost invisibly. Lucas watches her for a moment, his heart tight, and leaves slowly, feeling something he hasn't felt in a long time. A new beginning. As he walks down the hall, her name remains in his mind. Talia, a simple name, but one that seemed to carry everything he thought he had lost that night. Faith, life, and a little piece of himself. The days pass slowly at Santa Esperanza Hospital. Time inside seems to have a different rhythm, trapped between the smell of alcohol, the sound of quick footsteps, and the distant noise of stretchers. But in room 203, time passes even more slowly. Talia spends hours looking out the window. Outside, she sees the same landscape as always. The parking lot, some trees tired from so much wind, the gray sky of Washington City. Sometimes the rain falls softly, running down the windows and forming paths that she follows with her gaze, unhurried. She hardly speaks. When someone tries to start a conversation, she responds with a brief smile or silence. Her face, although more colorful, still shows deep fatigue, a kind of pain that does not show up in tests, but weighs heavily on every breath. Lucas passes by every day. At first, he told himself it was just routine, a way to check on his recovery. But deep down, he knows that's not the case. He comes because he wants to, because he needs to see those eyes again, even if they are sad. One morning, he arrives with a steaming cup of coffee. He knocks softly on the door. "Can I come in?" She looks up, surprised. "Of course." He enters slowly, trying to hide his nerves. He leaves the coffee on the bedside table. "I thought you might like it. It's the same one I drink. Maybe it's too strong." He tries to joke with a shy smile. She holds the cup with both hands. The steam rises, warming her pale face. "Thank you," she says, without looking at him directly. Silence returns, but it's a different kind of silence. Not heavy, the kind of silence that happens when words are still forming inside. In the days that follow, he repeats the gesture. Sometimes he brings coffee. Sometimes he just arrives and sits in the chair, reading something. He doesn't talk much, he's just there. And little by little, Talia begins to get used to his presence. On Wednesday, he enters with a small bouquet of flowers from the hospital garden. Simple, carefully picked, small yellow roses, slightly crooked, but lively, from the backyard, he says, leaving the flowers on the table. No one takes good care of them, but they bloom anyway. She looks at the flowers, then at him. "They look like me," she comments in a light, almost playful tone. Lucas smiles. "Yes, maybe." She looks out the window again, and the smile disappears. Her gaze is lost on the horizon. He notices the change and asks carefully, "Do you still think about what happened?" She is silent for a long time, then responds without looking at him. "Everything." The phrase sounds like a release, a weight she carries alone. Lucas understands. He recognizes that kind of pain. It's the pain that comes at night, tightening your chest when the world grows very quiet. "You know what hurts the most?" she continues, her voice breaking. "Thinking that I gave up, that I left myself alone, that someone found me on the floor and must have thought, 'Poor thing, I became that. A poor thing.'" Lucas feels a lump in his throat. He wants to say something that will heal, but there are no words that can cure that, so he just approaches her and speaks in a low, sincere voice. "Sometimes regret is the first sign that we want to live." She looks at him for a moment, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I want to live. I just know that I don't want to hurt anymore." He moves a little closer without invading her space. The pain doesn't go away suddenly, but it changes places. Sometimes it becomes something else. She shakes her head, wiping away her tears. "You speak like someone who understands." "I understand," he replies softly, more than he should. They look at each other in silence. There is a kind of understanding that needs no words. Two broken people recognizing each other in the days that follow. The routine repeats itself. He always arrives at the same time, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with fresh flowers, and she begins to wait for him. She doesn't say it. She doesn't admit it, but her eyes show it, because when he enters the room, her face softens. When he says goodbye, her gaze dims a little. One afternoon, he arrives and finds her drawing with a blue pen on a random piece of paper, formless lines, loose scribbles. "You're making modern art," he jokes, trying to make her smile. She looks at him and replies, "I'm trying to remember how to hold a pen. I haven't written anything in a long time." "What would you like to write?" he asks. She thinks for a moment and says, "An apology." Lucas frowns. "For whom?" "For me," she says, her voice breaking, but she continues, "For letting sadness take control of my life." He remains silent, his chest aching. He wants to hug her, but he doesn't move. He just watches her respectfully. She drops the pen and looks out the window again. Her reflection appears in the glass, a young face marked by old pain. "It's strange," she says thoughtfully. "People look at me and think I'm better, but inside I'm still broken." Lucas responds in a calm voice full of tenderness. "No one heals in a week, Talia. Sometimes it takes a lifetime." She looks at him, and for the first time smiles genuinely. It's a small, shy smile, but it's real. "Thank you for not stopping coming. I come because I want to," he says sincerely, "and because you remind me that life, even when it seems silent, still sounds." She doesn't respond. She just looks at him with a different sparkle in her eyes. A grateful look. Still sad, but grateful. When he gets up to leave, she calls him "Doctor." He turns around. "Yes, today's flowers." She points to the small table. "They're a little wilted, but they're still pretty." He smiles, like us sometimes. She laughs softly, her laughter mixed with tears, and he leaves the room slowly, taking with him the sound of that laughter, the first since he met her in the hallway. Lucas stops for a moment and takes a deep breath, looks at the floor, then at the ceiling. His heart feels heavy, but alive inside. Talia looks out the window again. Her reflection now has a new detail. The regret is still there, but next to it is a small spark, discreet but real. The morning begins like any other at Santa Esperanza Hospital. The sound of hurried footsteps, the strong smell of coffee and disinfectant, the tired voices of those who live between life and death. Lucas walks down the hallway with some papers in his hand, his gown wrinkled and his gaze lost. He passes the reception desk, and before reaching the door, he hears crying, a different kind of crying, deep from someone carrying despair that has been hidden for a long time. A gray-haired woman with a flowery scarf is standing in front of the receptionist, her trembling hands holding a crumpled photo, her voice breaking with every word. "Please, it's my daughter. She's been missing for weeks. No one will give me any answers. No one." Lucas stops. Something in that voice makes him feel cold inside. He approaches slowly, his heart racing for no reason. "Ma'am, what happened?" he asks, trying to be kind. She looks at him with red, tear-filled eyes. "My daughter disappeared, doctor. Since that rainy night, I've looked everywhere for her. I went with the police to the hospitals, to the churches. Nothing. She hands him the photo. The broken voice is hers. Is she here? Look. Lucas takes the photo for a moment. The world stops. His hand trembles. His breath catches. The woman in the photo has green eyes. The same tired, fragile face, alive in his memory. It's Talia. The ground seems to disappear beneath his feet. He has to lean on the counter to keep from falling. That's your daughter? He asks, almost without a voice. Yes, sir. The woman wipes her tears with the back of her hand. Her name is Talia Mercedes. She's 30 years old. She's a good girl. She was just sad. She's been sad since she lost her job. His voice fails him again. I just want to know if she's okay. Lucas closes his eyes for a second. His heart is beating fast. He feels the weight of something bigger than himself, as if fate had taken another turn without warning. Ma'am, he says carefully, I think I need you to come with me. The woman looks at him, confused. You know something? Come on. He motions for her to follow him, but slowly. Yes, ma'am. Mercedes holds her purse tightly against her chest. Each step down the hallway is slow and tense, filled with hope and fear at the same time. Lucas feels his hands sweat. He knows he is about to change this woman's world in a matter of seconds. When they reach the door to the room, he stops and takes a deep breath before opening it. She's in here, he says quietly, but she needs to get ready. The woman brings her hands to her face, trembling. It's my girl. He just nods and pushes the door slowly. Talia is sitting on the bed, staring out the window, distracted. The light enters softly, illuminating her loose hair. When she hears the sound of the door, she turns for an instant. Time freezes. Their eyes meet for a second, 2 seconds. The whole world fits into that gaze. Talia turns pale. Mom. The word comes out almost mute, as if she were afraid it were a dream. Doña Mercedes covers her mouth with her hands, her body trembling, tears falling before she can respond. Talia, my God, is it you? Talia looks down, ashamed, her hands clenching the sheet. Mom, her voice fails her. I thought you didn't love me anymore. The woman runs to the bed and hugs her tightly, as if recovering a lost part of her body. The two cry together, unable to speak. The crying is loud, heart-wrenching, full of relief and guilt. I thought you hated me, says Talia, sobbing against her mother's shoulder. I didn't want to embarrass you. I just wanted to disappear, Mom. Disappear forever. Doña Mercedes holds her daughter's face with both hands, forcing her to look at her. Hate you, she says with a trembling voice. Never, daughter, never. I just asked God to bring you back every day, every night. Tears run down both their faces. Lucas watches from the doorway with moist eyes, heart tightening in a way he hasn't felt in years. He sees this scene and feels something inside him break and mend at the same time. The mother strokes her daughter's hair and face as if to make sure it's real. You're alive, my God. You're alive. Forgive me, Talia. I couldn't take it anymore. I thought that if I disappeared, no one would suffer. I suffered, my daughter. Doña Mercedes rests her forehead against hers. Every day without you, it was a different kind of death. The room feels small for so much emotion. The sound of her crying fills the air. The sun shines through the window, blessing the embrace between the two women. It is an embrace that says it all. Regret, forgiveness, love. Lucas takes a step back, respecting the moment. He leans against the wall, trying to hold back his tears. He understands what he is seeing. It is the kind of scene that only happens once in a lifetime, when pain and miracle meet in the same instant. Mercedes dries her eyes and, without letting go of her daughter, looks at him. You saved my little girl, she says with a broken voice. How can I thank you? Lucas shakes his head, unable to speak. I just tried to say, but his voice breaks. I just did what I had to do. The woman smiles through her tears. God used your hands, doctor. I asked for a miracle, and he brought me here. Talia holds her mother's hand tightly. The two look at each other with that silent love that only those who have lost someone can understand. Lucas gives them one last look before leaving. In the hallway, he stops for a moment, runs his hand over his face, takes a deep breath, and feels his heart beating like it hasn't done in a long time. Behind the door, their voices can still be heard. Crying, broken laughter, the sound of life returning. The hospital is asleep. The hallways are empty. The sound of footsteps was lost hours ago. Only the clock marks the time and the soft noise of the respirators. He remembers that life, although silent, is still there inside. In room 203, the light is low, almost off. Talia is awake, lying on the pillow, staring at the ceiling. Lucas enters slowly, his robe hanging from his tired body. Still awake, he asks in a calm tone, almost like a father. She smiles a little. I couldn't sleep. When my head starts to remember, the sleep goes away. He approaches, pulls up a chair, and sits down next to the bed. It's always like this, he says. The night makes us think too much. For a moment, they remain silent. Only the sound of the heart monitor fills the room, that constant beep that beats along with her heart. Doctor, she says in a low, fragile voice, do you believe in destiny? Lucas thinks before answering. He folds his hands, looks at the floor, then at her. I think that sometimes life gives you a second chance, not to go back to what was, but to learn to take care of what's left. Talia is silent, her eyes filling with tears. She looks out the window where the moon shines faintly on the glass. Take care of what's left, she repeats, savoring the words. I like how it sounds. It's the only thing I have left to believe in, he says with a tired smile. Me too. I've already lost more than I could bear. She looks at him for a moment, seeing in his eyes a sadness she recognizes. You talk like someone who knows what it's like to lose someone. He just shrugs. A tired smile. I've also lost more than I could bear. She looks at him for a moment and sees a sadness in his eyes that she recognizes. You speak like someone who knows what it's like to lose someone. He just shrugs, not wanting to open old wounds. Loss is the price of love, but love is still worth it. Always worth it. She lowers her gaze and plays with her hands, her fingers restless on the sheet. I still don't know if I deserve this second chance, she confesses, her voice breaking. I feel ashamed of being alive, of having wanted to give up. Lucas leans forward slightly, his gaze firm and gentle. No one comes back by chance, Talia. If you're here, it's because there's still something you need to do. She takes a deep breath, tears running slowly down her cheeks. I just wish I had the courage to live without fear of falling again. He takes a handkerchief and gives it to her, smiling tenderly. Falling is part of the journey. What matters is what we do next. She wipes her tears, trying to compose herself. Sometimes I think you speak to people's soul, she says with a slight chuckle and a trembling voice. I've learned to listen to what people don't say, he replies, his gaze lost for a moment in the void. The clock strikes almost 2 a.m. The night is quiet, but something in the air changes. Talia takes a deep breath, tries to settle into bed, and suddenly, her chest stops rising. The air doesn't reach her. Her face quickly turns pale. Talia! Lucas jumps up. Talia, listen to me. She puts her hand on her chest, her gaze desperate, trying to pull in the air that doesn't come. The monitor begins to beep desperately. Beep, 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 until the sound becomes a long, continuous silence. No, 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 Lucas shouts, grabbing the oxygen tube. Stay with me. Look at me. The room fills with voices, footsteps, movement. The nurses rush in. The lights come on. Lucas takes control, his hands steady even though his heart is in panic. Adrenaline rushing. He gives orders as he begins chest compressions. Come on, Talia. Come back to me. The seconds become eternal. Sweat runs down his face. The sound of the team's footsteps seems far away. Only her motionless body and the constant beeping of the monitor remain. Come on, Talia, he murmurs, pressing his chest. You promised to try harder. More compressions. More attempts. The silence weighs heavily until suddenly a faint sigh. Small, but enough to stop time. The monitor beeps again. Beep, beep. She's alive, slowly but surely. Lucas takes a step back, unable to believe it. His whole body trembles. Tears fall before he realizes it. He takes her hand and feels the warmth return. The nurses breathe a sigh of relief. The noise subsides. One of them asks, "Doctor, is everything okay?" Lucas doesn't answer, only looks as if the whole world were in that moment. Talia opens her eyes, tired, her breathing still short and weak, but she looks at him with a calm, almost serene gaze, and whispers with effort, "I don't think I'm done with what I came here to do." The phrase hangs in the air like a divine sigh. Lucas feels his body shudder, his heart tearing. He holds her hand tightly, unable to say anything. She closes her eyes again, exhausted. The monitor continues its slow, steady rhythm, the most beautiful sound Lucas has ever heard. He rests his forehead on the edge of the bed, takes a deep breath, and lets the tears fall. Outside, the night remains silent. Inside that room, illuminated by a pale light, life has just won once again. That morning, the sun was different. The garden of Santa Esperanza Hospital was silent. All that could be heard was the rustling of the leaves and the birds that came to look for crumbs near the benches. The wind blew softly, smelling of wet grass and new flowers. Talia walked slowly, still weak, but with a firmer step than when she arrived. The light scarf covered her shoulders, and her loose hair moved with the wind. Lucas came right behind her with the board in his hand, trying to hide the knot he felt in his chest. He had seen many people leave that hospital, but none farewell had weighed on him as heavily as this one. He approached and stood beside her for a few seconds. The two of them just looked at the garden in silence. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said without looking at him. "I never noticed that this place had life. Sometimes we only see when we want to live again," he replied in a soft tone. Natalia smiled a little, then sat down on a wooden bench, her body still tired, but her gaze was different. There was light even among the scars. "Doctor," she began in a soft but firm voice, "I almost destroyed everything because I couldn't bear the pain." Lucas sat down slowly beside her and remained silent. He knew that any wrong word could ruin the moment. "The pain is," he tried to say, but she interrupted him. "I know." She took a deep breath, looking at her hands. "The pain makes you see the world twisted. I thought I was a burden to everyone, even to God. I just wanted to disappear." He looked at her intently, and the wind moved her handkerchief a little. Talia turned her face and finally looked him in the eyes. "What made you change?" he asked in a simple tone, but full of curiosity. She took a while to answer, her gaze lost in the yellow flowers growing near the wall. Then she spoke softly, almost in a whisper. "The way you looked at me." Lucas frowned, confused by how she looked. He paused, searching for words. "It seemed like you were looking at someone, not a body, not a mistake, just someone." The silence that followed was heavy and beautiful at the same time. Lucas looked away, trying to hide what he was feeling, but his emotions betrayed him. His eyes filled with tears. He took a deep breath, but his voice failed him when he tried to speak. "I just did my job," Lucas said. Talia smiled tenderly. "No, doctor. You saw me when I couldn't even see myself, and no one had ever done that before." Tears were already streaming down her face, with no she could hide them. She wiped her face with her hand, hiding her tears with a crooked smile. "You're stronger than you think." "No, doctor." She shook her head. "I just learned to look at pain differently, and it was you who taught me." The wind blew a little harder, moving the flowers. Lucas looked up at the sky, trying to calm himself. "Life is curious, isn't it?" he said. "Sometimes it pulls us back from the darkness, but it doesn't tell us why." "Maybe it doesn't have to," she replied. "Maybe we just have to be thankful and move on." He smiled, his eyes still teary. They stood there for a while without speaking, just feeling the soft air of the garden. The distant sound of an ambulance broke the silence, reminding them that the world was still turning outside. Talia stood up carefully. "I think it's time for me to go." He felt her leave but remained seated, watching her. She took a few steps, then stopped and turned around. "Doctor," she said. He replied, quickly wiping his eyes. "Do you think one can be reborn without dying first?" He thought for a moment, then replied in a calm voice, "I think that's exactly what you just did." She smiled a genuine smile full of gratitude and walked slowly down the hallway leading to the exit. Later, when Lucas returned to the room, exhaustion fell upon him. He took off his gown, left the chart on the table, and took a deep breath. The room now seemed too empty. The clock marked the end of another shift, but his heart felt light, different. As he was about to sit down, he noticed something on the table, a folded piece of paper held down by a yellow flower, one of the same kind from the garden. He recognized the delicate, almost trembling handwriting immediately. He opened the note. "Thank you for reminding me that I still exist. You saved more than my life. You saved my will to live." Lucas held the paper with both hands. The words trembled before his eyes, blurred by tears. He stood there, reading and rereading, as if he didn't want it to end. He leaned back in his chair and looked out the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange. In his chest, there was a silence filled not with emptiness, but with peace. And for the first time in many years, Lucas cried, not out of pain, but out of gratitude. The days at Santa Esperanza Hospital returned to their normal rhythm, but inside Lucas, nothing was the same. The routine that had once been a burden now seemed to breathe with him. The sound of footsteps in the hallways, the smell of alcohol, the noise of the machines, all of that which had once suffocated him now had new meaning. Although he said nothing, everyone noticed. He walked differently. His gaze, once dull, now had a certain calm. That morning he arrived early as usual, but instead of going straight to the autopsy room, he went to the hospital kitchen, made himself a cup of coffee, looked out the window, and stood there for a while watching the sun rise between the buildings of Washington City. The sky was painted pink and gold, and for the first time in a long time, he thought that there was still beauty in simple things. When he returned to the room, he turned on the old radio that was in a dusty corner, carefully turned the knob, and soft music to play, an old song that he and Clara, his wife, used to listen to on Sunday mornings. At first it was difficult. The melody brought back heavy memories he had tried to erase for 3 years, but he didn't turn it off and let it play, and for the first time, the music didn't hurt. As he listened, he opened the drawer and took out a small pot, forgotten there with dry soil. It was one of the plants Clara used to take care of, a type of succulent that survived even neglect. He filled the pot with water, removed the dry leaves, and placed it on the windowsill. The sunlight touched the new leaves, and Lucas stared silently. It was a small gesture, but for him, it was almost a new beginning. The days passed like this, one after another. Work, silence, music, and coffee. But now there was a different kind of emptiness. Not the kind that hurts, but the kind that teaches. It was as if the silence that surrounded him no longer drowned him, but spoke to him. Sometimes, while washing his hands in the cold water of the autopsy room, he was surprised to find himself thinking about things he hadn't thought about in years. How she smiled clearly when she sang, how she bent down to smell the flowers. He remembered every detail with a mixture of nostalgia and peace, and that scared him a little, realizing that he could remember without anger, without despair. One afternoon, leaving the hospital, he walked to the square in front of it. The wind was blowing gently, and people were passing by quickly, each with their own story. Lucas sat down on a bench and stayed there for a while, watching the comings and goings of life. He took out his cell phone, opened his song list, and found an old recording he had saved years ago that he had never had the courage to listen to. It was Clara's voice laughing and singing out of tune. When the sound started, his eyes filled with tears, but he let it play until the end. When it finished, he smiled a sad but genuine smile. That night, he made a decision. He couldn't keep running away from the past. The next day, he took the car and drove to the cemetery, the same one he had avoided since the funeral. The road felt longer than it was. His heart was beating fast, his hands were sweating, but it was the iron gate that creaked when he entered. The cold wind cut through the air, and the smell of wet earth reminded him of everything he had tried to forget. He walked slowly among the graves until he found her name engraved on the pale, white stone. Lucas stood in front of the grave, not knowing what to do. For years he had carried so much anger. Anger at her, at God, at himself. Anger at not having been able to prevent what happened. But at that moment, the anger was gone. He knelt down, ran his hand over the engraved name, and took a deep breath. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" he whispered with a trembling voice. 3 years, and I'm still awake, hearing your voice." He was silent for a while. The wind moved the trees, and the sound of the leaves was the only thing that answered him. He smiled a little, looking at the ground. "I'm trying, Clara." The words came out softly but firmly. "I'm not the same anymore, but I'm trying. I started taking care of the plants again. I even started listening to our songs again. I think you would like that." His eyes filled with tears, but not tears of despair. It was another kind of crying, the kind that comes when the heart begins to heal. He took a small flower out of his pocket, one of those yellow ones from the hospital garden, and placed it on the grave. "I met someone," he said with a smile that was somewhere between pain and affection. Not like you. No one is like you. But she reminded me that you can still feel, that you can still care." The wind blew harder, stirring up a little dust around Lucas. He looked up at the sky where the sun was beginning to set, and closed his eyes. "I forgive you," his voice trembled, "and I forgive myself too." He stood there for a few minutes in silence, breathing in the cold, clean evening air, then got up, adjusted his robe, and looked at the gravestone one last time. "Thank you for teaching me what love is," he whispered, even though it hurt so much. As he left the cemetery, he felt his body lighten. The emptiness was still there, but it was a calm emptiness, like a field after the rain. It wasn't absence. It was space. Space to start over. As he walked toward the car, Lucas realized that the silence that had accompanied him for 3 years had finally changed. Now it was the sound of peace. The afternoon slowly falls over the city. The sky has an orange hue that mixes the heat of the sun with the calm that comes after a long day. Lucas leaves the hospital through the main door, his shoulders tired and his robe hanging from his arm. The wind brings the distant smell of bread baking in a nearby bakery, and the sound of horns outside mixes with the sound of birds chirping. Tired shoulders and his gown hanging from his arm. The wind carries the distant smell of bread baking in a nearby bakery, and the sound of horns outside mixes with laughter, voices, life. He walks slowly, without haste. His heart is lighter, and for weeks now he has felt something he thought he would never feel again: peace. He takes a deep breath, looks up at the sky, and thinks that somehow life has smiled on him again. As he crosses the street, he sees a group of people gathered on the corner near a plaza. There are colorful blankets, flyers, and a table with bottles of water and posters. The wind blows papers to the ground, and a soft voice calls out to passers-by. "Good afternoon. We're talking about suicide prevention. One word can save a life." The phrase crosses the air and makes him stop. His heart skips a beat, and for a moment he thinks he's hearing something wrong, but it's not real. He would recognize that voice anywhere. He looks up and sees her. Talia is standing there smiling, wearing a white campaign t-shirt and a badge hanging around her neck. Her loose hair dances in the wind. Her face is colorful and bright with life. She has the same look as before, still deep, but now with light. For a few seconds, Lucas cannot move. Time seems to stand still around him. People pass by. The wind blows, but he can only look at her. Talia sees him and is surprised for a moment, then smiles broadly, her eyes filled with tears. "I know, doctor," she calls, walking toward him. "I can't believe it." He remains motionless, between surprise and emotion. Talia murmurs with a broken voice, "Is it really you?" She laughs with that soft laugh he had never heard before. "It's me. I kept my promise." He takes a step forward, his eyes shining. "You promised I would find a reason to go on." She lifts the colorful flyer in her hands. "I think I've found it." Lucas grabs the paper and reads the title in large letters. "You are not alone." His hands tremble and his voice breaks. "It's beautiful, Talia. Very beautiful." She looks at him tenderly. "I thought the best way to thank you was to try to do for others what you did for me. To be here talking to those who have lost hope. Sometimes that's all we need. Just someone to look at us with real eyes." He feels his eyes fill with tears. He smiles without being able to say anything. He just nods, like someone who is trying not to cry, but can't. "I have no words," he murmurs. "Then don't say anything, doctor." She approaches him with shining eyes. "Just be happy with me." He laughs shakily, half crying. "I'm happy, Talia. More than I can say." She takes a step and hugs him. It's a long hug full of meaning. A hug from soul to soul, the kind of hug that heals what words cannot. With her face pressed against his shoulder, she whispers, "Thank you for not giving up on me when I had already given up on myself." He closes his eyes, squeezes her hand tightly, and responds with a broken but sincere voice, "You were the one who reminded me what it means to live." They both remain there for a moment in silence. The city around them continues its rhythm. Cars, voices, wind. But in that little corner of the world, time stands still. She walks away, still smiling, her eyes moist. "I have to go," she says, pointing to the campaign table. "People need to hear this. I know it." He takes a step back, moved, and says, "They'll be lucky to hear you, Talia." She smiles again with that sparkle he will never forget. Life is strange, isn't it? Sometimes you have to die inside to learn how to truly live. Lucas nods, breathing deeply, and says, "Sometimes you have to see someone else be reborn to remember that you can do it too." They look at each other one last time, a look full of gratitude, full of life. Talia returns to the group handing out flyers, smiling at strangers, and Lucas stands there on the sidewalk watching with tears in his eyes and a light heart. He realizes that somehow this reunion was the silent answer he had been waiting for years. The wind blows harder, pushing one of the flyers to his feet. He picks it up, folds it carefully, and puts it in his coat pocket. Then he looks up at the sky and smiles. The sun sets, painting everything gold, and he feels that life has finally found a way to make peace with him. Night falls slowly over the city. The hospital is almost silent, only the distant sound of a nurse's footsteps and the beep of a monitor reminding him that life goes on. Inside, Lucas's room is empty, lit only by the dim light of an old lamp on the desk. There are reports, tests, and a notebook with a worn cover, the diary his wife kept. He sits down, takes a deep breath, and for a moment, the world seems to stop. The pen weighs heavily in his fingers. It has been a long time since he wrote there. The diary has been closed since the day she left, but now something inside him pushes him to open it. The yellowed pages still smell of lavender, the same perfume she used to wear. He runs his fingers over her delicate handwriting and smiles without meaning to. Silently, he picks up the pen and begins to write with a firm, though trembling, hand. "Today, I understood that life always tries to start over." He pauses for a moment, looks at the sentence, and feels his chest tighten. He continues, "Even though it seems that everything is over, someone comes and shows us the way back." The words come out simple, but they carry the weight of everything she experienced. Thalia's face comes to mind, her smile in the square, the sparkle in her eyes, the sound of her voice saying she fulfilled her promise. He feels a lump in his throat, but does not shy away from the emotion. "I think you, Clara, taught me to care, but it was life that taught me to start over." The pen pauses for a moment. He closes his eyes and listens to the sound of the soft rain hitting the glass. He feels that he is no longer alone. It is as if the air in the room has changed, as if a light presence fills the space, invisible but felt. He takes a deep breath, closes the diary carefully, and holds it in his hands as if it were something sacred. He remains like this for a few seconds, still, just listening to the sound of the rain and his own heart beating more calmly. He gets up and walks to the window. The hospital sleeps. The lights of the city flicker outside, small and distant. He rests his hands on the frame and looks up at the sky. The clouds part, and behind them the moon appears, round, clear, calm. The tear comes without warning, falling slowly, warm, and landing on the corner of his lips. He does not wipe it away, but lets it fall, and with a slight, sincere smile, he whispers into the void that now seems full. "Sometimes life gives us back those we thought we had lost, just to teach us that it's never too late to start again." She stays there, looking at the sky, feeling the cool air come in through the window. The rain becomes lighter, the wind blows softly through her gray hair, and inside her something settles, as if an old weight had finally found rest. She closes her eyes and murmurs softly, "Thank you." Then she returns to her desk, turns off the light, and slowly walks down the silent hallway. The hospital sleeps, but inside there is a new peace, something that had not existed for a long time. If this story reminded you of a second chance and you've watched it all the way through, write "We are not alone" in the comments and share your thoughts on the story. If you liked this one, I'm sure you'll like the other stories that appear on the screen. Subscribe so you don't miss out on new stories every day. See you in the next video.